and welcome to the UFO and Time Travel Show. This is your host, Renato Perez. It is Saturday, January 9th, the year 2010, and today I have a special guest. His name is Benjamin Creme, and he is an artist and also a messenger, and he would like to share some of the stuff he has been sharing for quite some years now, and I just want to say hello and welcome, Benjamin.
Hi, thank you. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
So, if you can, please start out by telling us a little bit more background about yourself before I start the questions and some of your message.
Well, first of all, I must say I'm very old. I'm 87,
Okay.
so I'm not starting out on something for the first time. I've been involved with UFOs since the early 50s, 1950s, throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and for the last 35 years, I have been involved in a work of making known to the world about the entry into our world for the first time in thousands and thousands of years of the spiritual hierarchy of this planet, of the masters of wisdom and their master, the world teacher. And this has taken me all over the world and caused me to write a large number of books and give thousands of lectures. And it all began for me with the spaceships, the UFOs, the flying saucers, as we call them.
Right. Okay, and have you yourself ever experienced seeing one live or, actually physically met with any people from off-planet?
Yes, very, very, very often, yes.
Very often?
Very often, yes.
How do they meet up with you? Do they, do they kind of give you a location to meet them, or do they just kind of pop into
Well,
your
that's how it happened, yes. It started for me with going to a lecture in my local, in a hall, in my local town hall.
Gotcha.
In London. I live in London. And there was a group purporting to bring to the public what they called the spiritual mission of the flying saucers. Now, this intrigued me tremendously. I didn't know about the saucers. We had very little news about the saucers, and most people thought, and most so-called authorities thought, that they were probably advanced forms of travel, new inventions of the Americans or the Russians or the Germans or somebody else. In the early 50s, there were many reports of UFOs following alongside civilian aircraft, and the pilots would make this known. Very often, the people in the airliner would see these extraordinary vessels like upturned saucers, and would see them flying alongside, and then they would zip off and go at fantastic speeds forward out of the range of the plane. This went on for a number of years, and no real information was known to them about them. Now, I met this group. I came to past the local town hall, and there was this meeting. I went along, and they played some tapes which they claimed to come from some individuals, two from Mars and one from an unnamed planet, but we took it to be Venus. And
Okay.
the two so-called Martian voices were a little bit similar, but very, very serious, and what they said was very, very serious. The one from Mars was given a name, and he had a very Southern English educated twang. It was extraordinary, what we call speaking with a plum in your mouth, you know? And it was like that, don't you know? So speaking just like that, in the way some of us never speak. I speak as we speak in Scotland, because I come from Glasgow in Scotland, and so I have a Scottish accent. But this was quite extraordinary, purporting to come from Venus. However, they impressed me enormously, and the energies which accompanied them were, to me, absolutely authentic. So I got to know this group and started to work with them. I never actually joined the group, but I worked with them for about 2 years or a year and a half, something like that. In the meantime, I had heard of George Adamski and his claim to have met a Venusian in the, is it the Arizona desert? I've forgotten the desert, but probably the Arizona desert. And how this had impressed the world. And I read the book by Desmond Leslie, Flying Saucers Have Landed, and the final chapter, which was written by George Adamski, and they published it together. And that sold hundreds of thousands of copies all over the world, and had an enormous effect on certainly New Age thought in America, of course, but throughout the world. In 1956, some friends and I went to the Air Ministry in London and asked what was the point of view of our government about flying saucers, so-called flying saucers, UFOs. They showed us into a room, and a very charming young man interviewed us, and he showed us dozens and dozens of books, all marked classified, behind him. And he pulled one of them out and said, well, it contains thousands of reports. All of these contain thousands of reports from airline pilots, policemen, soldiers, all authentic, upstanding, true British people that we could rely on, and pilots of airplanes and so on. And they give all their reports, but to our point of view, they are simply reports. They prove nothing. I said, well, do you believe in the existence of flying saucers? And they said, well, our attitude, the attitude of our Air Ministry is that the so-called flying saucers, the UFOs, whatever you like to call them, do not present a threat to the security of Britain. I said, oh, fine, so you believe that they exist, but they do not present a threat. They said, oh, well, don't say they exist. They say they do not present a threat to the security of this country, Britain. I said, well, if they don't present a threat, but they exist, they present themselves and so on, then they must exist. Well, we're not saying that. We're just saying they don't present a threat. So we couldn't get further than that. And then he had himself called out of the room, I think on purpose. He said, I'm awfully sorry, I have to do things. I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And he was out for a quarter of an hour. In the meantime, we opened the books and read the classified information, which was all top-level reports by mainly pilots of airplanes, test pilots and conventional pilots of regular flight pilots.
Yeah, private.
Air pilots, yes. And so then he came in about 15 minutes and said, I'm awfully sorry, I have work to do. nothing more really I can say about this, but thank you very much for calling, and so off we went. And that was the Air Ministry's view on it. They didn't say the flying saucers existed, but they didn't present a threat to the security of Britain. So how they could do that without existing, I don't know. But you can take what you like out of that. I thought the whole thing was very strange. And then I began to read more and more about flying saucers. And I read Adamski. I believed every word Adamski said. He seemed to be entirely honest and spoke the truth. And likewise, the writings of his colleague Desmond Leslie. And then I worked with this group, and we were given certain work to do. There was a genuine connection with the Space Brothers, but they had an outline of what the Space Brothers were doing. It wasn't a haphazard thing. The whole thing was planned, and what part of what they were doing was preparing a platform for the world teacher. Now, what I've been doing for 35 years is preparing the world for the appearance of the world teacher.
His name?
His name, Maitreya.
Maitreya.
The Lord Maitreya, the head of our own planetary hierarchy of masters and initiates. The most evolved people on this planet. Most of us, have been taught for as long as I can remember, that humanity is the top kingdom on this planet. That the life began on the mineral kingdom, was set down, and out of that grew the vegetable kingdom, and out of the vegetable grew the animal kingdom, and out of the animal grew the human kingdom. Indeed, we owe our physical bodies to the animal kingdom, but we are not the animal kingdom, we are the human kingdom. And most people think that's as far as you go. But for as long as time has existed in this planet, as long as evolution has existed in any case, there has always been a kingdom above that of the human. It is the kingdom of souls, or the spiritual kingdom. And from the human kingdom grows the spiritual kingdom grows out of people coming out of the human kingdom into the spiritual kingdom. There's a process. Towards the end of the evolutionary process on this earth, there are 5 great expansions of consciousness, known as the 5 planetary initiations, which gives the initiate a deeper and deeper insight into the plan of the great cosmic being who ensouls our planet. We call it the planetary logos. And the Space Brothers are the beings from our sister planets in our system. This solar system acts as a system, and it has a planetary government, and that's what we would call extra planetary government. It's a one planetary government for the solar system as a whole. And our planet, at least from the Master's point of view, is part of that system. We, humanity, don't have contact on the whole. It's restricted with the beings from the other planets, except those who make some kind of contact with the flying saucers or UFOs, as their spacecraft are called. And my work started with the flying saucers. My master, I have been in touch with one of the masters of our spiritual hierarchy since the 1950s, and he acted as a liaison between me and the people with whom I worked and whom I met, who come from the other planets, mainly from Mars and Venus. Most of the people who man the flying saucers come from Mars and Venus. A few others come from Jupiter, Saturn, and a few other planets, but the vast majority come from Mars and Venus. And my information is that most of the flying saucers themselves are made on Mars. It seems to be the factory planet. And Mars is extraordinarily inhabited. I mean, with a massive population. Many more people live on Mars, which is a much smaller planet than ours, but have a much bigger population than we have. We have about 67 billion people at the moment on planet Earth, and we're looking to about 2050 when there will be about 9 billion people. Well, there are already 9 billion people on Mars. And the Martians are small. It seems an odd thing that for this reason. They're small because the planet is small and because there are so many of them. But they work with a tremendous industry. They are indefatigable and devoted to their work, and they create the flying saucers for themselves and the other planets, and they also do for this planet an extraordinary spiritual work, a gift of service to this planet about which most people know nothing at all. They are denigrated and denied, their existence is denied by most of the governments of the world, and while the British government has never denied that they exist, they have not certainly encouraged you to believe that they exist. But they know perfectly well that the flying saucers are real, that they have landed, they have absolute proof of the existence of the saucers. And for 60 years, the governments of the world have kept this truth from the people of the world. It's a great offense to our intelligence and the intelligence of hundreds of thousands of adult, intelligent people to deny the existence of this phenomenon.
Okay. Yes, I definitely. I've read quite a bit myself about life existing on Mars. There was even a couple of books recently put out about an existence on Mars, and they've also gone as far as to say that there's American military bases there, and there.
Well, that I don't believe.
Yeah,
I don't believe there are American bases on Mars, nor is the life on Mars or Venus or the other planets the dense physical life we know on Earth. This is a dense physical planet, and for us, the dense physical is the physical. But we are extremely ignorant. We're extremely ignorant even of the physical plane, and think that we can measure all aspects of physicality on Earth. But we cannot. We don't have the technology to measure any aspect of matter above that of gas. So we can measure physical, the dense physical, the liquid physical, and the gaseous physical. These three ways that matter expresses itself. But actually, there are 7, not 3, but 7 planes of matter. And these have been known to the masters of wisdom for countless millennia. They call them the etheric planes of matter. There are the 3 physical, the dense, liquid, and gaseous, and then 4 further planes of matter, each one finer than the one below it, until the finest, the first etheric plane is the finest of all. But the fourth, the third, the second, and the first are invisible to our, normally invisible to our eyesight, unless you have etheric vision, which a few people have, and more children are coming into incarnation with already some level of the etheric vision. And it is this which will eventually prove the existence of the etheric planes of matter to humanity as a whole.
Can we liken the etheric planes to, I guess, radio waves or, electronic transmissions, sound? Are those the things that they
it's
can
different.
see?
No, it's different in thought. It is basically is matter, but it's matter which is finer and finer and finer than the three states of matter we know and can measure. And the tragedy is that we today build nuclear power stations all over the world in large numbers and spew into our atmosphere dust and radiation from these power stations and every kind of nuclear experimentation for nuclear weapons and so on, which also takes place. We pour this into our atmosphere, and the effect is a terrible impact on the life of humanity and the lower kingdoms, the animal kingdom and so on, and the life in the oceans and so on.
Of course. Tell me this. Based on what you're saying, are these other beings from Mars and so on? Can an Earth human see them with their eyes, or would they have to have some kind of special vision to see these people?
No. Well, if you have etheric vision, you can see them. But if you don't have etheric vision, and they want you to see them, they can lower the vibrational rate of the craft, the spacecraft, which are in the same way not solid physical but etheric physical. They can lower the vibrational rate until they come within our range of vision. They can land and they can appear as actual solid physical beings. And they are to themselves solid physical beings. But to us, that solidity is not total. Do you understand? It's physical,
right,
but not dense physical.
Yes, I do understand. I follow what you're saying.
But they have complete mastery of energy, and they can raise and lower the vibrational rate of both their vehicles and of their bodies so that they can be seen by us. Sometimes they land and come out of the spacecraft and make some kind of contact with Earth beings, but only if they know that they are accepted. They are absolutely, I want to emphasize this, they are absolutely, totally harmless to humanity. They come as brothers, as friends, and as helpers to set to right this planet. And without their constant work coming in their thousands and mopping up within the karmic law, they're not allowed to do it totally, but within the law of karma, they mop up the colossal mess of garbage that we spew into our atmosphere, and which is a terrific impact on the health of humanity. So that we owe them a great karmic debt. Whereas, if there's any account of flying saucers in any governmental report, it is also always to denigrate the beings of the saucers, to report them as aliens who are holistic, who are hostile to man, and who are taken people up and experimented on them. Nothing of that takes place. You don't go up in a flying saucer in your solid physical body. It's impossible. You go up, if you go up at all, in your etheric body. And they take you out of your etheric body and take you up. And your physical body remains on Earth.
Similar to, I guess, astral travel? Sort of controlled?
It is similar to, but it's not done in the same way. It's not astral. You come out and you are in your higher etheric body. Each of us has an etheric body. Most people don't know it, and they don't see it, and they can't use it. But without it, they wouldn't be alive. But round this dense physical body, we have like a partly the fourth etheric, partly the third, part of the second, and less of the first. And these make up streams of energy which flow in and out of our chakras, our force centers, up the spine. And these control the health and the activity of our physical bodies.
Okay, so with all that said, I'm definitely interested in hearing what the main message of Maitreya is. A lot of people are likening him to the next Jesus Christ, the next Savior, and what is the real message of it? I mean, I myself am kind of skeptical when it comes to a Jesus Christ figure appearing, and what, like, I guess my real question is, what is the real message? Is it people should start loving each other and being more and let love kind of lead the way, and then
certainly that, Renato, certainly that. Maitreya is the Lord of love. He embodies what we call the Christ principle, the energy of love. The Buddha was the Lord of wisdom. He embodied the wisdom aspect of deity, of divinity. Maitreya's message was, put in a nutshell, is something like this, that we are all brothers and sisters of one humanity. All of us.
I believe that.
All of us are divine. He says,
I believe that too.
he says we're all reflections of the divine, and each one is needed. Everyone is needed, because each one represents a fragment of the divinity which is shared by all of us. And he says, what prevents humanity from making a world decent enough to live in is that we don't recognize this fact. We don't know we are divine. The difference between the masters and ourselves, and they were men like us, identical in every way with us, as us, and went through every pain, every suffering, every humiliation, every degradation, and fought and wrestled away to become masters, free, above and beyond what we call the pool of matter. But these great men don't just disappear. Many of them elect to remain on the earth, and there are a large group of masters involved with the human evolution, others involved with the animal evolution, or the plant evolution, or with what's called the devic or angelic evolutions, and so on. There are many, many masters, but of those involved with the human evolution, about 2/3 of them are returning to the world, and are in process of doing so. To my personal experience, the master of all the masters, the Lord Maitreya himself, has been living here in London, England, since July 19th, 1977, awaiting his opportunity to come forward without infringing human free will, and to whatever it takes, teach, coax, guide humanity forward and upward into a recognition of its own divinity, to recognize that we are not only brothers and sisters, but we are all divine, and there is only divinity. And we're all at separate, different points in the realization and demonstration of that divinity. And that's the only difference. He says, nothing so moves him to grief as the pain and suffering of millions of people who are starving to death in the world. He said, nothing so moves me to grief as this shame. The crime of separation must be driven from this earth. I affirm that as my purpose.
I definitely agree with that 1,000%. You know, I think a lot of people still need to open their eyes and lose their hatred and separation and I think ultimately it's based on ego and
that's based on fear.
Yes, absolutely, and fear.
Fear is the biggest hindrance to humanity in its attempt to evolve. But we, at one time, thousands and thousands of years ago, were part of a humanity which was relatively very evolved. There was one time in humanity, the masters say, when the word to steal was unknown in the world. No one stole.
Right, and there was probably no such thing as money either.
No, they didn't have money. They didn't need money. And eventually money will be withdrawn so that humanity loses the lure of money. Money is a luring quality for humanity. They cannot think they can do without it. The more they have and the bigger the amount, the better they like it. It used to be £100, then it became £1,000,000. It's a millionaire, and now it has to be a billionaire. You know, you just put the aim higher and higher because people are so ignorant of what life is. They are ignorant of who they are and what they're here for. Nobody knows why we're here on earth. What's the purpose of life?
Well, in my personal opinion, I think the purpose of life is to live life and to eventually find a freedom and a true freedom, not, this political, what they call freedom. But Benjamin, I have I have a caller who's been waiting online. Would you like to take a question from them?
By all means, yes, certainly.
Okay, hold on one second. Hello, caller from the 440 area code. What is your name?
Hi, my name is Ralph Stevens.
How you doing, Ralph?
Hi.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Question for Mr. Creme. First of all, I want to thank you for being an instrument of bringing to the world's attention Lord Maitreya and the other masters.
Oh, you're very kind. I just do my job.
I personally have had an experience with him. Question I had for you, though, concerning the UFOs.
Yes.
You speak about planetary systems, and I do agree that most of the major planets in our solar system do have civilizations. How do you feel about outside the solar system? For instance, the Sirians, the Pleiadians, the Arcturans.
When we get big enough, I leave these alone because when you become a master, and we can't aim much higher, than becoming a master on planet Earth for the time being. That would be a tremendous achievement, and will be for those who take it. The master, when you become a master, you enter a phase in which they call it the way of the higher evolution. And there are 7 paths which the masters take. They take it according to not just that they like the idea, it's a sense of destiny. When you're a master, you begin to know your destiny and to know where it is you are best suited to serve in the world or in another world. And one of the paths is the path to Sirius. And the interesting thing about it is that this planet, Earth, which is not a very evolved planet at all, it is a sort of midway planet. Planet Venus, which is the alter ego, as it's called, of Earth, is a fantastically evolved planet. Mars is about where Earth is, except it hasn't made all the mistakes that we have made on Earth, and so the people are much more evolved than we are. But the planet itself is, roughly speaking, at the same level of evolution as Earth. But when you take when you become a master, you have a choice of one or other of these 7 paths of evolution. And the path to Earth service, you can go directly from Earth. It's the only one. When you become a master on Earth, you can then, if that is your destiny, and it's not everyone's destiny, if that is your destiny, you can go from Earth directly without going through any of the higher planets, which is normally the case. You go through directly from Earth, not very evolved, to Sirius. Now, compared with Sirius, this solar system is nowhere. If you can, to give you an idea, I said Venus was the alter ego of Earth and is practically finishing its evolution, and we are just sort of halfway along the path. If you went to Sirius, you find yourself in a situation which, compared to the Earth, is about the same relationship as our soul is to our personality.
Okay.
Now, our personality, our soul is, if you like, the alter ego of our personality. So, the relationship between Sirius and
Earth?
And this solar system is that of being the soul aspect in relation to the personality, which of course is the lowest aspect of ourselves.
Okay.
But Benjamin, just to clarify, so you are saying that there certainly is life in those sections of the galaxy or universe that you do believe there is a Sirius and a Pleiades and a Vega.
Everywhere in cosmos, I believe there is life.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Excellent. Did that answer your question, Ralph?
Well, Mr. Creme, I'd just like to ask you a little bit more. Do you believe that there was ever an interaction on planet Earth at one point between civilization of Sirius or the Pleiadians or the Arcturans or many other?
No, I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ralph. I definitely
Well, thank you
appreciate
very
your
much, sir, and God bless you, Mr. Creme.
Thank you very much. You're very kind.
Welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling, Ralph.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Okay. And, Benjamin, I have another person on the line. Actually, he is usually my co-host. His name is Bart. Bart, you there?
I am here. Hi.
Hey, Bart, do you have any questions for Benjamin?
Actually, I had just I've been listening off and on, but hi, Benjamin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I want to say this is fortunate to be able to get to talk to you, but like the previous caller said, I want to thank you too for everything that you've been doing
Oh, everybody's so kind. I start to cry.
I have to admit that it wasn't until more recently that I discovered more about you and about Maitreya and what you were, basically the message that you've been sort of spreading. Is it actually the case, or is it just my perception, just having stumbled upon you, that that your message is more sort of reaching a broader audience now, more recently?
I don't know if it's more recently. I've been at it for 35 years or so, 36 years, something like that. And by word of mouth, by lecturing, by books, and by traveling the world, I have made it known. But I work with a big group, a huge group throughout the world, in many, many countries. I come to the States every year. I used to come twice a year, but as I've got older, I can't do that. I come every year, and there's a large group in America who work with me. I go to Japan every year, and there's a huge group in Japan who work with me. And the same thing in Australia, New Zealand, and all over Europe, and South America, and you name it.
Yeah, so I think I'm part of a group that's more recently sort of becoming aware of all of the bigger picture. I had a couple of quick questions. One was that how do you feel, or how, I'm trying to think about how to phrase this correctly. What are your thoughts on a negative influence by outside races or beings on the human race? And how does that sort of come into play with what's happening right now?
Well, not all of our planets in our own system, leave other systems out of this story at the moment, but all planets in our system are not at the same level. For instance, we are only halfway along the way. About halfway, you begin to wake up, and humanity is beginning to wake up. And all that's happening in the world today, the entry into the new age of Aquarius, which is just beginning, but is definitely underway. The energies of Aquarius began to come in 1675, so we're well into the way. But the energies of the old age, the age of Pisces, are still very strong. They're being withdrawn all the time, but there are a large number of people influenced by them. So we have very backward-looking people who are holding on to the past and hate change and don't want to see the advancement of humanity. They want it to be as it was, which made them rich, and they want to hold it there, so they're holding on to the riches. It's all a very personal thing. And people are against progress. They're actually working against progress if their hoard, their treasure is at stake. And so they fight the progression of younger people who are aiming at a purer life, at a fairer life, with more sharing, more justice, more right human relationships. That's what everybody wants and needs, and wants to find right human relationships. And it is the next destined achievement by humanity. And we're on the point of coming to that great decision. How will people respond to humanity, to Maitreya and the teachers? He comes not alone, but with quite a big body of masters with him, one of whom is the Master Jesus, through whom he manifested 2,000 years ago. Jesus was not the Christ. Jesus was an advanced initiate, and Maitreya overshadowed his consciousness from the baptism to the crucifixion, and gave the Christian doctrines of love and turning the other cheek and all the rest of it, and showing the divinity of humanity and the love that God has for humanity, because God isn't separate from humanity. any more than we are separate from God. It couldn't be otherwise. It's a reciprocal love between the different parts of the same being. There isn't anything else but God. And we don't recognize it. We think everybody is separate. But there isn't one atom in this cosmos which is separate from any other atom. There's only total integration of all atoms of energy. And there's nothing but energy in the world. We live in an energetic universe. But that energy isn't a dead thing. It is a divine, living, creative process. And it has qualities. And the qualities, we call them divine. Love, wisdom, right relationship, power, extraordinary creativeness, and so on. All of these are divine qualities. And they're in the energies which are in us to a greater or lesser extent. And we develop through making them to a greater extent.
Yep.
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I agree with that. My question was really, more specifically, do you feel that there have been beings or forces that have been involved in the manipulation or the, I guess, working against this evolution with our race? Do you feel like that's been the case?
It is always the case. It isn't just one thing. They do not use the saucers, the flying saucers, UFOs. The UFOs and the people in the UFOs are, as I said earlier, absolutely 100% harmless to humanity. They are our brothers, if we only did know it. There are planets like the planet, I'm forgetting it, Pluto. Pluto is not a very evolved planet, and it has dark forces, and it tries to use these forces, and they come into play in our planetary life, but there are ways to control them, and our hierarchy controls them and keeps them at bay and so on. There are forces in everyday life, because these dark forces, negative forces, work through individuals. They work through big industrialists, certain nations, certain groups of people at the heads of nations. They work through the old, some of the old religious organizations holding on to the past. They work through many different facets of humanity. Those who do not want anything to change, who want to keep their power and their control of humanity, and so keep humanity where it is today. It won't work. Maitreya comes to break the power of those on humanity and to free humanity. He comes to free us, to show us that we have within us all the power and glory of divinity. And we only have to stand up and demand our rights. And that is what will happen. So he says the new age will be brought into being by the masses of people, but not by him, but by the masses of ordinary people in all the nations of the world, and they're beginning to do it.
I agree. I think that's exactly what it would take, and I would take that as a yes, Bart. And
I appreciate
what was I going to say? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I definitely agree with everything Benjamin's saying. Benjamin, I do have a question myself about 2012. Now, is there a specific time that Maitreya is going? Well, you said he's already here, but is there a certain time where his influence or his message is going to come clearly to the masses?
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is this, that very, very soon, in the very near future, and the 2012 is a red herring. It has nothing to do with it at all. It's to do with the Mayan civilization, whose calendar ended in 2012. And if they had not been overtaken by the Aztecs and those who followed them, they would have expanded that calendar. But it finished there, and let it be. But it's got nothing to do with the plan of hierarchy. The plan of hierarchy is that Maitreya, whom I suggest to you is in the world, ready to come forward, but he needs the right conditions, and the right conditions are very transient. They come and they go, they come and they go. He doesn't work with dates. He works with what he calls a window of opportunity. And at the present time we are in such a window, which started on the 24th of November, which, you know, is American Thanksgiving Day.
Right.
And, pardon?
Yes,
it
that's
is,
right,
isn't it? Yes. From Thanksgiving to around Christmas time. But my information is that it extends further. It's still going on. Maybe it's thinning out. I'm not sure about that. No, I'm told it's not thinning out. It's still there. And it could be that his coming could take place tomorrow, next week, in a month, in this coming year. You know, there isn't a set date. A date has been chosen for his first broadcast on American television. Maitreya will come out, but not declared as Maitreya. He will use another name, and he will not be known as Maitreya, and many, many people will gather around him who don't know anything about Maitreya, have never heard of Maitreya, and they won't see him as Maitreya. They might see him as the Christ. They might think he's Jesus had come again, but Jesus has come again. Jesus, the Master Jesus, is in the world. He's living in Rome, and he works with Maitreya all the time. They are as close as two peas in a pod. But there are 11 masters, 14 masters, I beg your pardon, 14 masters in the world now, one of whom is the Master Jesus, and his base is Rome, and he will come out with the other masters whom Maitreya will introduce on a great day called the Day of Declaration. When humanity, hearing Maitreya, whether they recognize him as Maitreya or not is not important. What is important is that they will want for the world what he is advising for the world. And that is that we must have peace. Without peace, there is no future for humanity on planet Earth. Because any small war could become a major war. And a major war would inevitably be a nuclear war. And if it were a nuclear war, we have the capacity now to destroy all life on planet Earth, human and subhuman alike. And this planet would become a dead planet for millions and millions and millions of years. And so he says, well, first thing is peace. But how do we get peace? He says there will never be peace while we have injustice in the world. So the only way to get peace is to create justice.
Can I ask?
And could I just finish this bit, please?
I'm sorry.
But how do we get justice? He says there's only one way to get justice. That's to create trust. When you have trust, then you will get justice. But how do you get trust? So there's only one way to create trust, and that is to share the resources of the world. So, in a nutshell, Maitreya says we have no alternative but to share the resources of the world. In that way, create the trust which makes injustice a thing of the past and makes war a thing of the past. We must decide utterly, totally, to make war a thing of the past and never engage on it again.
Well, I absolutely agree, 100%, no doubt about it. And one thing that keeps knocking in the back of my head is, are these people going to come across as religious figures representing a religion, or are they going to come across as humanitarians that religion has nothing to do with it? Because in my eyes, I think religion is has sort of been hijacked throughout the ages.
Yeah.
And
Well, Maitreya is not a religious teacher.
Good.
He is a spiritual
I like
teacher in the broadest sense of the word. But in the beginning, you'll find he's talking about down-to-earth things like sharing, economics, sharing the resources of the planet, creating peace and justice in the world. These are all things that we can do through litigation, through United Nations, through practical things. You know, he works with and inspires practical people. And the masters are only interested in practical people. Practical idealists they want. Not idealists, they are a penny, but practical idealists. That's a very different thing.
Well, that's great. I think that's excellent. And you know, I definitely think that it sounds like a great thing, and I personally am very optimistic and hope that something like this can happen. And I believe something like this can happen because I think that ultimately love is stronger than hate or control or any of those other things. And I think love and trust are absolutely what's going to make this world a better place, and can and will. And
I couldn't agree more, yes.
And I also want to let you know that the show, I don't know how much more time, it might cut us off to listeners. I'm not really sure. So just in case we get cut off, Benjamin, I just wanted to thank you very much for doing the interview, and thank you for your work and bringing out the message myself. And that's it. I just want to say that now in case we get cut off. That's all.
Well, it's very kind of you. Thank you. Perhaps we'll talk again.
Definitely. Is there anything else you want to talk about since we're obviously still going?
Well, if we're still going, people will see Maitreya. They'll see him on television, but he won't be called Maitreya. But when the day of declaration, when enough people are responding to him and calling for the television networks to put him on television, let him speak to the world, whatever they call him. Because, you see, people are the Christians are looking for the Christ, they're waiting for the Christ. They want him to come and speak to us. And they think they've got him in their pockets. But the Christ is only one aspect of it. The Muslims await him as Imam Mahdi. Hindus await him as Krishna or Kalki avatar. Jews as the Messiah. Buddhists have his name right. They are awaiting Maitreya Buddha, foretold to come now by the previous Buddha, Gautama Buddha. So he personally doesn't like these names. I mean, he doesn't want to be called the Christ or Maitreya Buddha, but just simply the teacher. And you will not meet a man as humble as the world teacher is. There is no being in the world more humble than he is.
Right. There will be no boundaries separating anyone in any of those ways, especially through religion. There will be no separation. He will be
not at all. He says religion has its place. He said a religion's like a ladder. It can help you to get onto the roof. But once you're on the roof, you don't need the ladder. You can give it away to somebody else.
That is a great analogy. I love that.
I love it too.
That is excellent.
Renato, can you hear me?
Sure. Bart, you got any more questions?
I wanted to ask you a question. Benjamin, how do you or how does Maitreya feel about the notion of someone looking to him as a savior figure and that sort of detracting from...
Well, he says, I'm not a savior. He said, nobody can save you. You can only save yourself. To save yourself is to realize who you are and to be that. You are a soul incarnate in a physical body. We are actually threefold. We are a spark of the divine, and that spark cannot manifest directly at the dense physical level. So it creates what we call the human soul as a divine intermediary between the highest and the lowest part of ourselves. That soul incarnates over and over and over and over again until the personality expression at any given time reflects more and more of the qualities of the soul, becomes more divine, more loving, more intelligent, more full of power, more full of wisdom, whatever is the path that the soul takes. And we are all governed by certain energies called rays, which make us all different, but we are all essentially one. In every incarnation, we have different trays, but we run the gamut of all the trays until when you're a master, you can do anything. You are omniscient. Some Maitreya is omnipresent. There's nothing can happen in the world which he doesn't know about. He can hear me talking now, I am certain.
I guess my question was, is there a fear that somebody might end up worshiping the individual and not getting the message?
Is it possible, sorry?
My question was, is there a concern on his part, or does he understand that it may be that some of the listeners may worship him, the individual, as opposed to recognizing?
Oh, I'm sure many will do that. That's why he says, I don't want followers. I don't want people to follow me. I don't want people to worship me. I want them to look at themselves and to love their brothers.
And sisters.
And sisters, of course.
Does his one last question? Do you feel that his possible presence at this point in time reflects something larger going on with humanity, with the human race?
Oh yes, we have reached a point where we are waking up. We've undergone a long, long sleep for hundreds of thousands of years and are waking up. We've come from a very high point. On the day of declaration, Maitreya will show you this. We'll point it out, give you a feeling of where we have come from and of the terrible descent into this awful materialism in which we're stuck today. And he will renew the call to the divinity of humanity and tell them how to change and how simple it is. You must simply share the resources and you create the conditions of happiness for everybody.
Yes, that's what I like to hope for as a global community with no borders, no boundaries, no laws.
That's exactly what we will have. But we have to do it. He says the new age must be made by man, by human hand and by human foot. He says, I am the architect only of the plan. You are the willing builders of what he calls the temple of truth.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm liking it more and more. The message. I agree so far with just about everything you've said as far as the message that he would like to get across to people. I personally believe in that message a sound.
Well, you will hear Maitreya. You'll hear him before I will, because you'll hear him on American television. I cannot imagine that you will not recognize that that's Maitreya. But whether it is or not, it's not up to you to say, look, I know who he is. He's that man, so and so, so and so. Because, A, that would deny them the possibility of making their own recognition. But more than that, they might follow him for the very reason that you've mentioned, that they want to adore him, to worship him, rather than to change the world.
Right. In other words, he wants people to worship or to believe in the message more than just him as a person.
Absolutely. Certainly not to worship it, but to take it to heart. And this is the thing. People say, how can he do it with, nearly 7 billion people? Well, he doesn't have to convert 7 billion people. It's there was a time in the early Agni Yoga books, it says, Maitreya says, there was a time when 10 true men could save the world. Then came a time when 10,000 was not enough. I shall call on 1 billion. And a few years ago, maybe 6 or so years ago, I asked my master, has Maitreya got his billion people yet? He said, yes, 1.5 billion. And now it's about 1.8 billion. So it's nearly 2 billion people whom Maitreya knows will respond to his call for justice and sharing and therefore peace in the world.
You know what? Can I throw my opinion out there? You know what I think people should do? I think people should take this message that you're broadcasting and simply rebroadcast it if they believe it. Since I believe in your message that love and peace will rule the world and only people can change the world and make it a better place, I think the best thing any person can do is take that message and pass it on and hope that others believe in the same message.
I couldn't agree more. That's absolutely how it will be.
Well, I think this was a great interview. I think that I believe in the message. Great. All it did really for me was confirm things I already believe. I just didn't have the exact same words in my mind. But now it just makes it all that much more clearer for me that it's that simple,
Yeah, it's simple. We only have to do it. But, there are many people working against it. The great power-hungry moguls of the world in every branch of human endeavor, they are working to store up their treasures,
Yeah, spirit of change.
There's a huge world to change, so it won't all happen overnight. But in response to humanity's message, to Maitreya's message, Maitreya has no doubt that humanity is ready to respond.
Well,
I agree. Yeah.
I agree too, man. I do. I like I said, I think.
Well, from now on, I suggest you tell everybody listening to your program that that's what they should do. They should make it known. All we have to do is to share the resources of the world. That will create the justice and lead to the end of war forever.
Right, and people need to stop being afraid to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Changing is so simple and it brings joy to your life, so why not give it a shot,
Absolutely. Spot on.
See, I guess that was my thing in the beginning of this conversation, is that a lot of people are taking it that they're waiting for this guy Maitreya, and what they're really waiting for is everybody to share the message, which is love and trust, sharing, peace, working together. It's very simple things. People just aren't grasping the message. That's the problem.
I know a lot of people, who have heard me speak over the years and would say they are my devoted workers and so on and supporters, but they do nothing. They just support the idea. They don't actually make it known.
Yeah, they're holding up the sign or they're wearing the clothes, but they're not going much
Well,
further
I
than
know
that.
people who are afraid to speak, afraid to tell their own family that they believe this.
Of course, that's like with UFOs.
Yeah,
You know,
the same. They think they will be laughed at or put down or something like that.
see, my problem is whenever I talk about UFOs and people try to ridicule me, I jump right back at them. If I'm in the lunchroom at work having a conversation about UFOs, as soon as somebody starts trying to make fun of me or whatever, it's simple to say, hey, what do you think? We're the only things here? That you're telling me you can see the moon in the sky, but there's no other planets? That we're the only people, we're the only existence, the only things with consciousness out there? No way. That's crazy. That's,
Of course. But I've known people who said, well, if I could see a flying saucer, I would believe it. You would? Yes, I would. Show me a flying saucer. I would believe it if I saw it. I'd love to believe it. I've showed them as a flying saucer. Sometimes fantastic visions of a flying saucer.
and those would be the same people who would be bouncing around on the floor like a fish if they saw one right in front of their face, too.
Well, I have seen people's mouths fall open. They see this thing floating or going at tremendous speed across the sky, and they say, what was that? I said, that's a saucer. I said, yes, it's not a plane, it's not a this, it's not a that. Is that a saucer? Wow, I've seen a flying saucer. Then they run up to other people and say, I've seen a flying saucer. Except, well, Ben said it was a flying saucer, but it couldn't have been. Couldn't have been, could it? Oh, no, it couldn't have been.
You can see it and deny it.
You can't win. If I could only see it, I'd believe it. It's not true. Until other people believe it.
That's
I
right.
think until many people believe that Maitreya's in the world, other people who might have believed it themselves won't believe it, I know thousands of people are ready to believe it, longing to believe it, but they don't do much to make it happen.
Exactly.
You have to spread the fact, Maitreya is in the world. The hierarchy of masters are returning to the world and have a great part to play in the future.
And you know what I think it is? I think people are expecting the so to speak magic wand where Maitreya is going to come touch them and make them a better person. When they have to realize they have to do that themselves.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It's true. They think, oh, Maitreya's coming in, so it'll all be all right, It's easy to get into that frame of mind, but you see, people don't know the power of Maitreya. When I say these things, you believe it because you already believed it. It's not because of me. You already were there, so when I speak it aloud, you say, yeah, of course, it makes sense. But when Maitreya says the same things, his energy goes with it, and it enters their heart, and they can't deny it. They say, of course, I feel it. That's the truth. When he speaks to people, the truth penetrates the heart, and they're changed.
Yeah, I think people are basically what he's going to do, in my eyes, or what this message will do, in my eyes, is infiltrate the computer-like programming that people have in their brains. It's going to just tear it down finally and open up their minds and hearts, and then they will see clearly and not be so programmed and distorted, I guess.
On the day of decoration, they'll become like little children, There won't be a dry eye in the planet except those who are counting their money and not listening to the broadcast. On the day of declaration, Maitreya will not overshadow, it's not the word, but come into to telepathic rapport with every single adult, everyone above the age of 14 on this planet. Thousands, millions of people. And speak to them telepathically in their own language. So we'll hear them in English, French and French, Dutch and Dutch, German and German, and so on throughout the world. And in that way, he will call on their divinity, the divinity that they don't even know, that they've forgotten about. He will speak to them as if, take them back to when they were children, and they'll tell them things that they will listen to and remember how they felt when they were children.
Yep.
Close to the truth.
Right, something that cannot be denied.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand completely. Anything else, Bart? Bart, you there?
Sorry, I'm here. I muted myself.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any more questions or anything like that?
I wanted to just say I have to admit that when I first started just reading about what you've been sharing, Benjamin, I was a little hesitant or reluctant to the message because the idea of a savior figure has always had sort of a negative connotation.
Yeah. Well, he's not a savior. He says, "I don't come to save." Nobody can save you. No one except yourself.
Yep.
When you're saved, you realize it's a realization. It's an inner experience. It's not something that somebody else does for you or to you. But the Christian message has always been that Jesus came to save humanity from the results of its sins. It's nothing to do with that. Jesus didn't do that and couldn't do that, and no one else could do that. When you see the Master Jesus, as you will, you can ask him, did you come as a Savior? He came as a vehicle for the Christ by prayer to use. And he worked through Jesus for these 3 years of his life. And there was no question that he accepted, Christianized, that he came to save the world. He came to show us the world as it is, and man as it is, and the love of God for what it was, rather than a vengeful Jewish Jehovah who called on an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was the Jewish expression of divinity. He came as a Jew through Jesus to the Jews and wasn't recognized. He was the Jewish Messiah. Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. And Jews have to recognize Jesus as the Messiah before probably they could recognize Maitreya as the Christ.
Well,
or the world teacher. He doesn't like these names, these titles. But just the teacher is good enough for him.
That's what we like to do.
Yep, and it works for me too. I'd prefer to have a teacher or a messenger than some religious figure. And I think that ladder analogy was great. Religion could be the ladder, but once you're on the roof, you don't need the ladder anymore.
No.
That's great.
Religion is about belief, and life is not about belief. It's nothing to do with belief. It's experience, awareness. That's what gives you life, and through which you know life. You know what it's about. You know why you are here, and what you have to do. It's experience and awareness, not belief. Anyone can believe anything. For 50 years you can believe you're a communist and then overnight become a Roman Catholic.
Yep.
It's nothing to do with that.
Can I ask you, Benjamin, are you
I saw just a video of you recently. You were talking about the star or the stars that had just recently shown up in the
Yes.
sky. When you had learned that, is that something that you had foreknowledge of, or did you learn of it as it happened? And has this sort of galvanized you or reinvigorated yourself personally about this potential imminent sort of event?
No, I've been talking like this for the last 35 years. It's not a new thing. The star is only the new thing. I'm in touch with the master, one of the masters, constant, moment-to-moment contact with one of the masters. He lives in the Himalayas, and he is one of the disciples of Maitreya. And I could ask him anything. I mean, lots of things I don't know, most things I don't know, but I can get any information I need to know from my master. And that's how I answer impossible questions. My books are full of questions and answers, but the questions are put by people and the answers are usually given by my master, or have originally been given by my master and remembered by me.
And do you
So what I'm saying about the star is a recent event, because the star is a recent event. There are actually 4 stars, 4 spaceships, which are being made in Mars and Venus and another planet, and take up position as 4 stars. Only, depending where you are, you see only one of them. So we talk about the star, but it's actually 4-fold. And they're gigantic spacecraft, each of them about the size of 5 football fields put together, colossal. Mm-hmm. And they appear in the heavens, in all the quarters of the world, so you can look up and there they are, and they go through their routine. They change color constantly from blue to green to yellow to blue to orange to red to violet and so on. They move about in the way the planets move about. They oscillate in the sky. They appear and disappear. They go way into space and then come back again. They appear on if you look up YouTube, you'll see hundreds of videos of the stars. YouTube, go to YouTube and dial stars, and you'll find hundreds of visions of videos of the stars. Going through their paces. They're extraordinary. But they're not really stars. But they are the same stars in the same category of star as the Star of Bethlehem, which led the 3 wise men from the east to Bethlehem. It's the same process. That was a flying saucer. Flying saucers have been visiting this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. About 300,000 years.
Yep, many people definitely have been saying that for quite a while. Yeah. And one question I had for you, because it was part of the material I read about you as well, and they said that you had some kind of explanation for that spiral.
Yes, indeed. That spiral that appeared over Norway was the star. It came from behind the mountains and shot up into the air as a star, and when it got to a certain height, then slowly started to circle, to produce a spiral, a fantastically regular spiral, round and round and round and round. And then at the end of this huge, so that covered a great part of the sky, a bolt of blue-like flame, or blue light, shot out from the center of the star down to the earth. And that was the whole thing over. It lasted about 12 minutes, 12 to 14 minutes. It was, nobody had any idea what it was. People said it was this, it was that. Finally, it got round to being thought to be a Russian Russian space
Military?
vehicle, missile that went out of control. It was nothing of the kind. The Russians denied it. The Russians have an agreement with the West that if they're carrying out any missile activity and so on, they'll let us know so that we don't start off a third world war. And if we do this, if we carry out the same activity, we let them know. So this was nothing to do with any missile activity of the Russians. And in any case, it didn't come down onto the earth. It went up from the earth, up behind the mountains, went up into the sort of visual center of the heavens, and then started spiraling. And then at the end, shot this sort of bolt of light down, blue light down to the ground. And there was no debris or anything to do with a space vehicle or missile that got out of control. It was the star. And it went round the world and it immediately hushed up and put out. This is what happens, you see, when anything real and unexplainable in the ordinary way takes place, people either deny its existence, people deny the existence of the star, they call it Venus, they call it Jupiter. Now Venus and Jupiter can't move around the sky, can't change colour. They're on a certain path and they follow that path. They don't dot about and up and down and left to right and so on. People don't use their common sense to just believe anything that seems to solve the problem, so something that didn't know